compliant solution that includes up to the minute.
Learn the most advanced recruiting techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with Rick Girard.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. Today we're talking about hiring practices that drive great people away. Companies complain that they can't find people, and yet they do a lot of alienating through their actions. I'm Rick Girard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. Our mission is to discuss and deconstruct insights from top-performing entrepreneurs and industry experts. Every week, we uncover tested tactical solutions to solve your company's toughest hiring challenges. Today, our guest is Todd Raphael, the editor-in-chief of ERE Media. So Todd manages a global publications and conference for ERE, a global community of recruiters and others in the talent field. He's also appeared on Sirius XM, VoiceAmerica.com, Wall Street Journal, Time, Forbes, and many, many more. He's quoted quite often, and he's definitely a thought leader in the talent acquisition game. Most recent, I think last year or the year before, you were actually named Glassdoor's HR and recruiting thought leader, right?
I think they had a list a couple years ago. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Awesome. So I want to welcome you to the show. Todd, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Rick.
Absolutely. So we're going to have a little fun today. So tell us a little bit about ERE Media, if you wouldn't mind, just to kind of set the stage for everybody.
Sure. It's a big community of people in the recruiting and HR profession. We have three main brands: ERE, which is all about recruiting and hiring; SourceCon, which is about finding and engaging people; and then TLNT, it's like talent without vowels. The word talent was taken, so we went with TLNT, and that's all about human resources. And so ERE, we put on the one that we're talking about most today, ERE.net. We put on 2 conferences a year also for recruiting leaders, one in San Diego in the spring, and this fall in Orlando.
All right, excellent. TLNT, kind of like if you made a little smaller, it would be TNT, right? So the dynamite.
True. Yeah, I love listening to people try to say it. Some people call it talent, or they go something like that. Yeah.
That must be fun.
Yeah.
So things we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about what drives candidates away and how do we fix the issues. So let's start with identifying kind of what drives people away. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things you're seeing in that side of things.
I'm seeing some companies say they can't find people, or they can't find good people. You've heard that.
Yeah,
can't find the right people. But when you look at their job advertisements, their job descriptions, their career websites, all of those types of things where they're advertising, they're trying to find people, they seem, unfortunately, in some cases, I'm generalizing here, but in some cases, sadly, they seem to be looking for actually young, single people. They talk about their workplace and how it's a party, and there's foosball, and there's ping pong, and there's quarterly retreats and things like that. Well, if you're, say, 40 and your parents are, let's just say, 80, and you've got to visit them once a day or twice a day or whatever, and you're barely able to manage your weekend with the smartphone and the work and everything going on nowadays, the last thing you want to do on earth is go to a quarterly retreat with, work. It doesn't mean you don't love your job, but that's the last thing you want to do. Some of these things they're advertising are turnoffs for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So not only are they not attracting people, but a lot of people look at this stuff and they say, well, heck no, this isn't for me. I'm not poo-pooing ping pong or foosball. I happen to love both of them. I have a ping pong table.
Absolutely.
But as a general rule, I would say companies in some cases seem to be looking for young single people.
Well, I find that in job descriptions too, they use those as the perks. It's not really about kind of solving that person's problem. It's like they think that that's going to attract people. Like everybody wants to play foosball or ping pong, right?
Right, and let's face it, the society has changed. It sounds cliche, but it's really true. And I'm not so sure that companies are fully keeping up. There's a whole group of what I would call working fathers. It's kind of a clunky expression, but it's been studied a bit. Boston College is one. They've looked at fathers nowadays, and their fathers are spending about as much time as mothers in many cases on average with kid responsibilities.
Sure.
Fathers are almost at par now, at parity with their wives in terms of how much they worry about the kids, feel guilty when they're missing something, or torn between work and personal life in terms of how many % of the fathers versus mothers pick up the kids when they're sick. Fathers are almost at parity with mothers. They're feeling the same thing. And when fathers see these ads, whether they're 40 years old or 27 years old or whatever, they in many cases can't do it. And I can reel off a long list of people I know who are fathers who are opting out of quote unquote traditional work and are working as entrepreneurs or independent contractors or some other arrangement. And these are
so they
hard.
can have that flexibility, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of them pick up their kids at 3 o'clock, and these are hard-working. One of them is a CEO. These are people who are working crazy hours, high-achieving people. I'm not talking about people who want a break, although that's okay too.
Yeah.
I'm talking about high achievers who just, it's not working, this thing that where society is ahead of the workplace and are saying you must be in the office at this hour and commute this time and blah, blah, blah. It's not working for a lot of fathers. And by the way, I've talked about this issue on a few radio shows and some blogs, and invariably fathers contact me afterwards, some in tears, saying that I have hit a nerve that no one's talking about this topic, and that they feel as overwhelmed as others, but they feel uncomfortable talking about it and whatnot,
Yeah.
and society doesn't. So there are a lot of groups like this. It's just one example. I talked to a woman a couple of days ago. She emailed me on LinkedIn. She left Nestle Purina. She's was doing a great job. She likes Nestle Purina. She had great things to say about Nestle Purina. And she had a good experience there. And she said they're actually fairly flexible. But she got an offer from some company. I forgot what the company is at the moment. And the company, generalizing a little bit here, doesn't care when, where, and how she works.
Just
and
as long as she gets her work done.
Right. And so
Yeah.
she left. She's got this new job, and she's picking up the kids at whatever time they get out of school, 2:45 or 3. And this person's not disengaged and taking a break. She's fired up. She loves this company.
Yeah.
She's more excited. We're going to work harder because she's now got less of a commute and less of everything else. And I'm hearing this story over and over. Paul Ryan.
But getting back to job descriptions, I mean, really what you're saying is that they're alienating people.
They're alienating people. Job ads, job descriptions. You hear people talking about, as you said, perks and benefits mostly.
Yeah. And they're not engaging in the right people, right? I mean,
Correct. And then to turn around and say we can't find anyone, I don't know.
It's just silly.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I see that a lot of times too. I mean, you've got to make your job descriptions attractive to really everyone, because you don't know who the most talented person is that's going to fit in that role.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, looking for gems is what you should be doing, as opposed to, mining the coal that's down there, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So the next piece of this would be kind of your first contact, right? When you reach out to people. And this was the part that I kind of added to our conversation, because I find that when recruiters or companies reach out to people, it's about screening the person out rather than screening them in. Do you agree with that?
I can't tell you how many people, and you've heard this before, are successful people now who would have been screened out by most people. Example would be Elon Musk.
Yeah.
People talk about as a presenter, he's boring, or he says all the time, or he chooses nails. I don't know what he does. He's nervous, he's awkward, or whatever. And so if you interviewed him, you might say, oh, he's not charismatic, whatever that means, or he's not passionate enough, or he's not cool enough. He's not going to be a leader. He's not going to be an innovator. He's just too awkward or socially inept or something.
Yeah.
But that's Elon Musk. You're going to weed him out? It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I think that the criteria that some companies are using to weed people out don't seem to make sense.
Totally
Going
agree.
back to what you said about the first contact, yeah, I mean, a first contact, one good thing that's probably missing in some first contacts is what would it take for you to leave, or what are you missing now?
Boom,
Todd,
right there.
Todd, you might love your job, but what can I do to make it better, or what are you not getting now?
Yeah. I call that a career wound. I mean, I think if you can locate somebody's career wound and you can heal it, or have the ability to heal that in your role, then boom, you've got something powerful there.
Yeah.
That's much more powerful than what happens, which is somebody goes into a conversation selling their job.
Right.
Right.
Because that's probably easier. You're trying to sell a job to a lot of people.
Yeah.
The other involves finding out information from an individual.
It's kind of like talking to that person, though, where it's, you ever had those conversations with somebody where they start telling you're telling them a little bit about yourself, and they cut you off and they say, well, let me tell you more about me.
Pretty much every day. Yeah.
Okay.
My dog died. Oh, mine died too. It was tough.
Let me tell you about me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's scary. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, the next thing that you would say probably drives people away, the interview process itself.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I read these blog posts all the time, all these newsletters talking about advice for job seekers, and I feel for them. The things that they're told must be so frustrating. For example, things like you're supposed to not apply for jobs. You're supposed to, because you can't blast a resume. That'll never work. You have to use your network.
Yeah.
That's fine. But I mean, who hasn't thought of that? I mean, a few people maybe haven't, but like a lot of people, if they've got Bill Gates living next door, they would have hit him up already. Like they've tried to use their network. There's not people who are like, never thought of this.
Yeah.
And a lot of times these various pieces of advice for job seekers will say, get to know someone at the company and send them your resume and that kind of thing and work through a person, which makes a lot of sense rather than getting lost in a black hole.
Yeah.
However, many times, if not most of the time, job seekers try that. The person either doesn't respond if they don't know them, or maybe if they respond, they'll say, I don't know you. Could you please apply through our applicant tracking system?
Yeah.
Most recruiters and employers, unfortunately, don't either have the time or the inclination or whatever to respond to people who they don't know. And that's unfortunate, but that's the reality. So I feel bad for job seekers. You're talking about the interview process. When I read advice given to...
well, that's granted. They make it past first I mean, they haven't even made contact,
right?
I mean, that is a terrible thing. I mean, are we too lazy then in actually reaching out to everybody and finding out if in fact they are good rather than judging just a resume?
Lazy or not, I'm not sure I could judge depending on how many open jobs a recruiter has.
I'll say myself, I've been lazy before where I haven't called somebody based on a resume.
Yeah, I mean...
And then I did later on, and I found out, God, this person's really good. I'm an idiot, right? So
yeah.
I don't, that's just from my own personal experience. So
I would argue this rather than lazy. I don't remember the number because,
inundated.
I forgot everything I ever learned in school, but there was some number of biases we're born with, whether it's 67 or 73, primacy, recency, confirmation. All of these biases we all have, and I think we're humans, and so we don't realize that we have these, and we weed people out or we screen people out in our heads based on these biases, and it's not so much lazy, but it's more like human nature.
Yeah.
We say, what were your top 10 movies that you've ever seen, or who are your top 10 best basketball players, and we name like the 10 we saw the last 2 years as if no other basketball player ever existed before 2 years ago. Well, that's recency. So we just have this human nature, and maybe laziness sometimes too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think also people look for commonality too, as opposed to whether or not this person's going to fit well into the interview.
Which is funny because fit is a very highly talked about topic among recruiters. They want people to fit into the culture, but so is diversity. You can't stop hearing about diversity either. And diversity and fit sound kind of different to me. Do you want diversity or do you want fit? I mean, that's a big question in recruiting and hiring nowadays. Yeah. Those aren't really the same. Do you want to hire someone who's different than everyone or someone who's the same as everyone?
Yeah, exactly. You just brought up something a few minutes ago, too, that was kind of interesting when you were talking about the fact that people go into an applicant tracking system or spawn to their website and they never hear anything back. Why? Well, why aren't we fixing that? That's a huge piece that we need to fix as well, right?
I guess there are two parts to that. One is you're asking why they never heard. The other is why they didn't get a job.
No, actually just hearing back in general. I can't find people I'm going to complain about it, but then again, I'm not taking, I've got people coming in and I'm screening them out before I even talk to any of these people prior to make that assessment.
Sometimes you never hear that you got into the system in the first place.
That's
if you hear in the system, you might hear back a few weeks later, but it's sometimes so many weeks later the job seekers are at that point mentally moved on or frustrated. Yeah. So companies are trying to rectify that. They're trying to have systems in some way that will keep candidates informed a little more, like where your pizza is or where your UPS package is. They're trying to kind of get that to that point where they can give people more like touch points to follow the process along the way and say, well, here's my application was received.
Yeah, and there's been systems that are automated that do a good job of that, but also they're automated, so sometimes it's not really giving personal feedback.
Right. There's some systems. I think ZipRecruiter might be one where it says someone, or maybe it's not, but someone looked at your resume or looked at your application. So there are systems that give you a sense that you are alive and someone has looked at you and you are aware of your existence, at least. Yeah.
We're talking to Todd Raphael, the editor-in-chief of ERE Media. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this problem, and then we're going to provide you some solutions on how to get past some of these issues. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Higher Power with Rick Girard, giving you access to recruiting techniques that will help you hire key talent to build your company towards real success. Rick is a recruiting executive and entrepreneur who's been successfully recruiting in the aggressive Silicon Valley technology landscape for the past 2 decades. After a very successful stint at Apogee, he founded Stride Search in 2012. Based on a lean efficiency model, Stride has uniquely positioned itself as a leader in retained search for the most critical talent hires within a small organization. Whether you're a startup executive or recruiting professional, by listening to Higher Power with Rick Girard, you will walk away with skills to help you attract and hire great talent. Now back to Higher Power with Rick Girard.
Welcome back to the Higher Power Radio Show. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and today our guest is Todd Raphael, the editor-in-chief of ERE Media. We just discussed what drives people away and the hurdles we put up in the interview process, and now we're going to talk a little bit about how to fix this mess. So we didn't touch upon it, but I wanted to touch upon like job boards and kind of evolution of video and AI matching, that sort of thing. What are you seeing that's working kind of along the lines of those things?
You know, it used to be that people would use Monster and they'd go post a job.
Monster?
Monster.com.
Are they still around?
Still around.
It's
yeah,
kind of like
around.
Match.com, right? It's
Not only still around, but they're, probably doing a lot more business than companies that are much more well-known,
Are
But
they
then,
really?
Monster, and then people would post a job. You get your 130 resumes from all over the world.
Sure.
And then you try to kind of sift through them. And I think that kind of process is waning a little bit. I don't mean that people aren't posting jobs or people aren't responding, which they are, but I mean just that there's more to it now. Companies have more sophisticated matching to try to push the jobs, the resumes to you that are most relevant to you, the employer. Companies,
to the right people.
The right people,
so they're
yeah.
trying to target better.
In some cases, you don't necessarily even have to post a job to the outside world. You may have a database, an applicant tracking system full of people.
Mm-hmm.
You post a job, just write out your job description, and it ranks into you the people in your system who you might fit, who you already have in your system who might fit into this job even before you've even blown out the job to the whole world. So companies are getting more sophisticated. I mean, I think you mentioned video. There are companies that are using video interviews, and there are even these sophisticated systems from companies like HireVue, VUE, that go where like the computer goes through the video and is supposed to analyze your cadence and your words and determine who you are based by a computer analyzing your words and your tone and your answers to sort of rank you in terms of could you fit this job. So
Gotcha.
There's a lot more going on than just post your monster job and you're back.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, God, I haven't used a job board in 10 years. And I would imagine from what I heard from people in my circle of influence is that, we're in a really low unemployment market, so you don't get a lot as far as people posting their resumes up on job boards right now.
How about LinkedIn? You don't use that either? Is that not a job board?
I do use LinkedIn Recruiter.
Okay.
It's a great tool.
Okay.
But again, you got to use it the right way, and it's been so people have been so deluged with in-mails that essentially people don't respond back to anymore.
Yeah.
And I do most of my recruiting in the San Francisco Bay Area, so it's even tougher to get people to respond.
Yeah.
So where are you finding through your circle of influence, or where are the best hires produced?
Well, traditionally the answer has been employee referrals. I'm not so sure that that has changed a whole lot. That's a tough one, though, because as you start building all kinds of systems to get more referrals and to figure out who can refer who and whose friend knows whose friend and whose friend and all kinds of technology to do that, you don't need technology, so to speak. You need somebody to just lead that and drive it. But even if you drive it and say, I want to get more referrals, we only know so many people. We don't really know that many more people now. We just have more connections. So referrals can only go so far when you're talking about referring to someone who doesn't know someone else. They just go, thanks for Todd, thanks for sending along Rick's resume. We'll get back to him if he's a fit. And you never really hear back. So
well, that's the thing. If he's a fit for what? I mean, a lot of times they don't even know what a fit is for or why that. I don't know. It's a weird phrase to me. Right.
And there was an interesting study. A professor from Toronto talked about at one of our conferences referrals are not always good. Depends who does the referring. He looked at truck drivers, and some truck drivers give referrals that turn out to be bad truck drivers if they're not very good truck drivers themselves.
Yeah.
And the better truck drivers give good referrals that become good truck drivers. So
Sure.
if you're really sophisticated, you have to figure out who's doing the referring, and that's a better source of hire.
So in a smaller company, you're probably hiring really key people that are all fairly good, or at least you're trying to. Those are referral sources. So if you're getting 3 to 5 names from each person, you can build on that, right? And then you can use each one of those as a referral source as you kind of work through.
Sounds good. Some
Yeah.
people would say that if you're a small company who are basically referring 3 of their friends, that's not diversity,
yeah.
some people say.
That's true.
Yeah. And you're sort of building on the same culture over and over and not getting diverse opinions and thoughts and things like that.
Yeah, you've got to really make sure that you're cross-pollinizing and not keeping the same person in there.
Right.
Because then you end up
Just
with
with your fraternity.
yeah. Then you
Just a little older and
end up with
bolder.
the
Yeah.
job description of, hey,
Yeah.
we got a really cool ping pong table.
Yeah.
So,
There was a famous for those of us who spent all of our time reading about recruiting, study that Google did of their own source of hire. You asked me about what the best sources of hires are. And Google did a study, as you may have heard, and a lot of people have heard, and found out surprisingly that their best hires are not from the best sources that they thought, like the best colleges or even college at all. And they
Yeah.
had to really go back to square one and go, wait a second, we're not finding the best people from what we thought were the best places. And they have to rethink everything now about, is elite college, what does that mean even to go to an elite college? There's another company, big software company, that told me that one of their top colleges, if not their top source of hire, they realized was the University of Illinois at Chicago, which no one have ever heard of. We've all heard of probably University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana from watching
Yeah.
basketball.
Yeah.
No one's even heard of the Illinois Chicago, and that was like their best source of hire. So, and that was better than, I guess, some Ivy League schools or whatever. So,
but
you know,
there's
you really
top performers in every walk of life, really. I mean, it's just figuring out how to identify those top performers, rather than judging it based on school or kind of, whatever they're. You look for evidence of success in whatever they do.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a guy who, if you followed all this, is playing for the Angels now, Ohtani.
Okay.
I can't even say his
I
first-
don't follow baseball, but
Okay, so there's this guy, Ohtani, who's playing for the Angels. He came from Japan.
okay.
He's tearing up the league. Japan, everyone agrees, is a slightly worse baseball league than American baseball. If you put that in corporate terms, most people would not have hired this guy. They would have said, he didn't come from McKinsey or wherever,
Yeah.
or Google. He's not going to be as good as someone who came from McKinsey or Google or Netflix or something. He came from an inferior ex-employer. But the Angels and everyone else was able to determine this guy has the right skills, the right talent, the right everything else, and now he's tearing up the American major leagues as he was in Japan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so, just on the flip side of that, I've placed people out of Google at other companies, and they haven't been the greatest hires that they've made.
But they probably have a job for life because they got Google on their resume.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I would imagine. I mean, it's really easy to get those people interviews for sure. Everybody wants to talk to somebody out of it. There's just that kind of the thought that if I hire somebody from Google, my company's just going to grow, right?
Maybe that they went through the Google hiring process. If Google accepted them through a tough, sophisticated hiring process, they must be really good.
Yeah. So how do we change up the mix of where we recruit? So maybe do the opposite of what we've been doing?
Yeah, I mean, some companies are starting to look at different colleges and asking themselves, and it's not at all about loosening their standards. It's about just looking at your hires and saying, all right, are the places we think are producing the best hires, are they or are they not? So some companies are broadening their mix of colleges, broadening the list of ex-employers.
Yeah.
Some companies are being more open to people who have criminal records that they didn't used to be. Or
That's interesting.
People with disabilities that they would have weeded out. Military people who have been in the military and trying to figure out how that experience translates into corporate life.
Yeah.
So all sorts of things like that. There's a company, Allied Universal. It's the merger between two, I think Allied Barton and Universal Security Service or something. Two security companies that merged. They're offering a bounty, a few $400 or something to small nonprofits who can get them a hire. So they're going all around the country and saying, hey, local Goodwill of Costa Mesa, if you can get us a couple employees to be security guards and we hire them, we'll give you $800 or whatever.
Oh, nice.
So, just by kind of broadening out like that, doesn't sound like that much.
So they're actually doing it for other businesses.
Say it again?
They're taking more of a B2B approach in actually their recruiting efforts.
They're doing it, I think, for nonprofits, like a Goodwill
Sure.
or a local veterans group and things like that.
Because they're getting the write-off as well, right? As a donation?
I don't know. No, I don't know. But certainly, $400 can be a lot of money for a small nonprofit, say, I don't know, a literacy group in some small county, and then everyone wins.
Yeah, that's definitely. Go ahead.
Yeah. Another thing you were talking about, what companies are doing, and job descriptions. Some people are taking a fresh look at their job descriptions to go back to that, and having their even vendors now who can look at your job description and say, I know, talking about Star Wars and ninjas don't always attract people and things like that. They don't attract everyone. So taking a fresh look at job ads, job descriptions is another thing some companies are doing.
That's something I actually give a talk on, is job descriptions and how to flip them upside down or write them so they're more engaging. Because if you think about it, if your marketing department wrote your company information like you write job descriptions, they get fired.
Right.
How terrible are they, right?
Right.
It's that, let me tell you more about me and why you should come work for me because I'm special, right?
Right.
And it's really selfish and not engaging, and it's a turnoff.
Yeah.
Some
of them, by the way, have gotten a lot better. However, they all the ones that are good, tend in general to describe attributes of a job that are the same as other jobs.
Yeah.
So they'll say, I don't know, opportunities to move up or something, and that's what everyone else says. So it's really, you really have to kind of look at what you're offering and how it's special and how it's different, what's great about your company, and then work that into the job description.
I take it from the perspective of I want to touch that person first and get them bought in. So I want to open up my career wound in the message just to get them thinking, oh, okay, well, this place is different. So most people are open to hearing about something because they don't have growth, they're tired of the work, or there's bad leadership. So why not touch upon those things in the job description?
Yep.
If you could spark something there, then now you got them reading, and then take it a step further, give them a clear picture of the challenges of the role and what they need to accomplish.
And by the way, some companies are offering videos in their job descriptions, and some companies.
Wait, how do you do video job descriptions?
Well, some companies have categories like.
Okay.
I think it's H&M, the retailer,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll clothing. So they'll have a category like assistant manager, and they'll have someone talking about what it's like
to be an assistant manager.
Other companies are taking
That's
a
cool.
step further, and they'll have the manager, the specific manager you're going to work for. And that person will make a video of 3 to 5 minutes or whatever, talking about that specific job, and then you get to kind of meet, so to speak, that manager themselves.
Maybe we should have marketing from now on write job descriptions. Have your marketing department do it. They can't do any worse.
Yeah. Well, by the way, there's another company, Stories Incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of a tangent, but interesting. Instead of asking candidates for references, they tried giving references of the manager. They said, here are some phone numbers of people who have worked for the manager you would work for. Why don't you call them and see what it's like to work for that manager? And we're going to give you people who don't work there anymore, who quit, because we're so confident they'll say good things about that manager, even though they quit.
That's ballsy and really cool.
Yeah.
Now, what if your manager was terrible?
Yeah.
I guess you have to really monitor your Glassdoor reviews to make sure that manager doesn't have any bad.
I think in this case it was one manager,
Yeah.
the CEO, who they did it
Okay.
with, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. It's great, though, if you've got management like that, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so just to sum up, fix the job descriptions, fix the way in which you engage people, right, and how you reach out to them. And one thing we kind of left out is follow-up. A lot of people complain about the fact that they go in, they go through the whole process, and then the company disappears. They never hear anything back. It's just kind of a thanks for coming. We'll get back to you, and they just never do.
And it has been documented over
Yeah.
and over with companies like Virgin America, Virgin, the global brand. Those people who don't get follow-up and have a bad experience are less likely to want to fly on your airline or buy your Starbucks coffee or whatever.
Yeah.
We're customers and we're job candidates also. Yeah.
That's a great point. You're a customer as well as a candidate. I mean, you should treat everybody like they're a customer.
Right.
Boom. I love that. All right. So we're just about out of time for today's show. Todd, thanks so much for the time investment today with our community. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are interested in finding out more about you and your company. How do they reach you?
ERE.net is perfect. It's our website, and our fall conference in Orlando is ERErecruitingconference.com. It's a bit of a mouthful.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We have two conferences a year for recruiters and recruiting leaders. First just wrapped up in San Diego, and the second we rotate to different cities this fall in Orlando. And we have 2.5 days of speakers from all around the country, if not the world, talking about doing a better job at recruiting and hiring and attracting people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I need to get on that agenda.
All
right, so I want to thank our listening audience for tuning in to this week's episode of Higher Power. A quick thanks to our team, our engineer Paul Roberts, our producers Andrea Ballin, Shanti Ryle, and Kim Iverson. To listen to this show and any past episodes, you can check us out at HirePowerRadio.com or Higher Power Radio on iTunes and Spotify. Follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook at Higher Power Radio Show, or you can follow me on Instagram at RickGerard1. We have another great show lined up for you guys next week. Our guest will be Nick Livingston, the CEO and co-founder of Honeit Software. I'm your host, Rick Gerard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power with Rick Gerard on OC Talk Radio.